Will the Dallas Cowboys be able to improve their roster this offseason? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. A little bit of a different show this Friday. Instead of getting you prepared for a playoff game, we're answering your Twitter questions because what else are we going to do?
What else do we have?
We've got a lot of really good ones, though. So we're going to try to get through as many of these as possible. First question from William. He wants to know, can the Dallas Cowboys truly improve this roster if they choose not to sign Dak Prescott to an extension and allow him to play on his current contract?
Oh, that's an interesting question, right? I think it's difficult, right? It's they have a lot of people under contract, but I think what you really, I think the first consideration you have to think about is probably CeeDee Lamb, right? Like how do you make CeeDee Lamb work? How do you sign some of these other, because that's something that regardless of what happens this year, you're probably going to want CeeDee Lamb beyond this year, and you need to figure that out this year. So even with the $60 million hit, you have to figure that out. And then on top of that, you've got 16 free agents outside of that, right? And some pretty serious names to consider, including Tyron Smith and what his future is, and some other kind of key role players as well. So I think likely what would happen is if you decided not to extend Dak and lower that $60 million cap hit number, you're just going to be extremely handcuffed, right? Like they just aren't going to be able to re-sign all of these free agents. The ones who they do re-sign, they're probably going to have to take some kind of sweetheart deal. They'll probably have to kind of backfill with some cheap veterans and then hope that some of their draft picks, kind of step up to take some of the roles of those 16 that are leaving. I think improving the roster at that point would have to come from the draft and from improvement internally. And not that isn't always or usually the case with the Cowboys, and that's their kind of general philosophy of development of skill on their team. But you'd even more so need to lean into the idea that there isn't big time veteran help coming. There isn't, a bunch of opportunities to plug holes with cheap veteran deals. Really, even you likely would need to be doing most of this through draft and undrafted free agency, and then maybe trying your best to try to take get some of these guys that potentially could be leaving to take sweetheart deals to stay close to home.
I also just think they need to make more signings. And I'm not saying go out and spend a bunch of money, but they signed 2 veterans last year in free agency. That's it. Do you remember who the 2 were?
Only
2 outside Chuma Edoga, which actually that would have worked out well.
That would work.
Ronald,
did work out.
And Ronald Jones. Those are the only veteran free agents that they signed. And actually, I think the Udoga one is an example of why they should do it more often. You don't have to spend a bunch of money. Spend $2 to $3 million. Go out and try to get some guys that fit your scheme well, and maybe don't overvalue your own players so much. Last year, we saw the Cowboys put a big emphasis in retaining their own, which is generally a really good idea. Just to be clear, I think for the most part, that is a good strategy. But we saw them pay Donovan Wilson maybe a little bit more than he should have gotten. They paid Leighton Vander Esch. They paid Malik Hooker. Again, that one worked out extremely well. I just think if you can grab 2 or 3 other veterans just to kind of fill the middle of your roster, you'll be better off.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of more just like plugging holes, and especially if like
But that's what you
you've
have to
got
do
like
in free agency.
yeah,
You just try to
absolutely.
plug holes until you get to the draft, but just do it a little bit more frequently.
I think the going back to the question though, which is improving the roster. I think the problem is like I think you can kind of get it back to where you want by doing what we just discussed, right? Like, okay, we lost 16. You take a 3 or 4 that you're able to figure out a sweetheart deal. You signed, 6, maybe 5 or 6 veterans for cheaper deals, and then you hope the improvement on the team comes from your younger players in the offseason. Just because you may not, and this again is only in the scenario where the Cowboys are not extending Dak. If you extend Dak, or if you get him to a large deal, you reduce that number. That obviously frees up a lot more flexibility to go and actually get a veteran who could improve the roster, get you better. I just think that if you don't re-sign Dak, if you decide to kind of bite the bullet on his number this year, you probably do some improvement through free agent, but I would say that even more so than normal, the improvement part is gonna need to come from the draft, and you'll have to just plug holes with cheap veteran deals.
And it's always hard to know exactly what you're getting with the draft.
No,
Now,
that's true.
here's one of the things. I think some of the positions that the Cowboys need this year: linebacker,
Yeah.
running back. What other positions you think the Cowboys have huge holes in?
Maybe like I would say you probably need a defensive back. You probably need offensive lineman because you just don't know what the state of your offensive line is going to
Okay,
be
let's say
next
it's
year.
offensive lineman. Running back, linebacker, and offensive lineman are 3 positions where you can get
Yeah.
some good play from rookies, especially running back and linebacker. So that part of it's good where compare that to last year, Landon, when you drafted a run stopping defensive tackle and kind of like a blocking tight end in the first 2 rounds. I'm not saying that those are bad picks, but those are generally positions that take longer to develop. I've got an idea that the Cowboys will get more production out of the rookie class this year just because of the positions they're going to be drafting.
Yeah, the 2023 class is going to be performing a lot better than in 2024 than they did in 2023, simply by number, just like by having them all here, right? Overshow not here, and then obviously I think both Scooney and Mozzie should face pretty serious jumps just because of what you see during the course
Sure.
of development throughout their careers. So yeah, that is another aspect of this too, is those kind of the second year leap from this group of class that, like we said all along, at the top has 2 players at positions that take a little bit longer to develop.
I'll be curious to see if the Cowboys consider more trades like they did last year with Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore, guys that can come in and play right away, because I think everybody knows what's at stake here for the 2024 season. Like, this is kind of your year. And if it doesn't work this year, then everything's getting torn down. So maybe the Cowboys are more open to those type of deals. We shall see. Landon, I want to talk about the linebacker position because you can make a case that was the weakest position for the Cowboys going into the playoffs. And maybe that's the reason why the defense struggled so much on Sunday against the Packers. How do Will McClay, Stephen Jones, and the rest of the front office fix that position moving forward? We'll discuss that next. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors knows that everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They've got everything from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is over and we're getting deeper into the playoffs, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That is $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use. There's so many different ways you can bet, like live same game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab, or you can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays and so much more. You can still bet on who's going to win the Super Bowl. You can bet on the two teams that are going to meet in the Super Bowl. It's absolutely fantastic. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a layup with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Lana, let's get to some questions about the linebacker. I mean, we've got a million about the linebacker.
Yeah.
One from Chris says, with Leighton Vander Esch and Overshown coming off injuries, and with Bell's struggles and with Damone Clark's struggles, how do we expect the Cowboys to attack the linebacker group this offseason?
Well, I think Overshown is coming back. I would not count on Leighton Vander Esch anymore.
No.
I would be shocked if he comes back next year.
He was on the field on Sunday. I don't know if you saw that. He was.
Yeah, I did.
Linebackers hyped, which is awesome. I have some serious doubts that Vander Esch will ever play again.
Yeah, me too. And I'm not anticipating that. So I would say not to anticipate him coming back. They can go draft a guy. I imagine they take one in the first 3 rounds, probably somewhere, and that should be enough. I think that there's been a little too much made of the linebacker issue, and frankly, too much made of the general issues with stopping the run. I think this isn't what Katie Drummond actually this morning did a whole tweet series about someone had posted the video of the Cowboys loss in the playoffs to the Rams, and that is what bad run defense.
CJ Anderson game.
Yeah, where he had like 173 yards. That's not really what happened in this game against Green Bay. Like Aaron Jones had 3 touchdowns, yes, but I don't know that this was a situation where the Cowboys were unable to stop the Packers' run game, and that's why they lost. I think they lost because Jordan Love had the single greatest EPA creating performance by a quarterback in the entire season against the Cowboys.
Yeah,
throwing the football. So I do think we need to fix the linebackers, but I also think that I'm interested in seeing what Bell and Clark are like next year as well with Overshown. But I don't know that you need to draft a linebacker in the first round or spend a whole bunch of money getting a veteran linebacker. I think you probably add one more younger body to the mix. Maybe if you want to pay for a cheap veteran big guy for some early down stuff, you can. But I don't know that like linebacker to me is as desperate a situation as it's kind of being made out to be in the media right now.
I wouldn't be opposed to the Cowboys grabbing a linebacker around the the same price he paid Leighton Vander Esch.
Around the 7-Eleven, like if they were having to go in to pick up groceries, that they just picked the guy up.
The linebacker market is so weird because it's like the very top guys get paid like $21 million a year. And then if you are competent, you get like 10 to 12 million a year. And then it just falls completely off, which is wild. But okay, I'm just going to throw some like names at you.
Yeah.
Like if you could get a Josie Jewell or like a Jordan Hicks, and those guys are both like 30 something now, but like on a 1 or 2 year deal. So that way you have one veteran linebacker. I think one of my fears is I don't know if they can go into the season with it just being Marquise Bell in year 3, second year playing linebacker, Damone Clark in year 3, and Overshown going into year 2, but not playing a snap.
But
like
year
I do
one,
think that,
really.
Yeah, year 1. I think it would be beneficial just to have that one guy in the linebacker room that can be like, hey, this is what they're doing. This is how we stop it.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. And I think Josie Jewell is an interesting name that we had talked about earlier before the trade deadline, if the Broncos had been interested in kind of letting him go, but it ended up they weren't. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, I think a veteran linebacker makes sense, but I'm also not breaking the bank, obviously, or breaking the bank in the draft to try to go get that guy necessarily.
No. I think a good strategy is you take another guy in the mid rounds, you develop it, you continue to just put some decent sized resources is, but I think the people think that they need to go out and spend a first round pick on a linebacker are insane because what really matters here is your defensive linemen and your defensive tackles. If those guys don't get better, I don't think it's going to matter too much who you have at linebacker.
Yeah, and again, because even then, like with linebacker, as much as we want to say it, the pass game is so much more important than the run game. So you need to find linebackers who can cover, and we've got linebackers who can cover. It's about on rundown. So I just don't need to spend a bunch of extra resources to get run stuffing linebackers when, first of all, they're cheap, and second of all, they can be kind of gotten at any time, really.
The problem with the linebackers is there's only so many of them that are going to fit. If the Cowboys would have signed Shaq Leonard, he wouldn't have made any difference in the Green Bay game because they got shredded through the air in that game. The linebackers struggled in coverage. Shaq Leonard wouldn't even been on the field in those situations. So you've got to find the right guy that can play all three downs, but can also come in on a cheap deal. It's going to be hard to find that guy, Landon. Like, just to be honest, like it's going to be hard.
That's why you solve the problem up front. You solve it at defensive tackle and defensive line, because then you get the bang for your buck on both sides and the benefit of helping these linebackers who, maybe the difference between one of those top guys and the guys that you got could be made up by just having better defensive tackle play.
So there was another question that I saw, and I'm sorry, I forgot who mentioned it, but they said, with this being kind of a win or go home year for the Cowboys, would Dallas be open to like trading their first round pick to like Carolina for Derek Brown, who had an unbelievable year, but because Carolina doesn't have a first round pick because of the Bryce Young trade, maybe they would be open to doing something like that. I'm not saying Derek Brown specifically, but like, is that type of move something you would be interested in?
Yes. I mean, potentially, if I believed that this was actually one of those years, or that it was an all-in year. I have a hard time still believing the all-in thing, because I've heard this bit so many times before, and their feet never match their voice, right? Like, watch their feet. So if
Jerry Jones just isn't going to want to rebuild at 80, however many years old he is,
So, and if that's the case, then I don't know if like going all in they're not actually, if they're willing to actually go all in to trade their first round pick for a defensive tackle. I mean, I don't know. I'm just about short of saying I'll eat my shoe, before they do that, because it's like, I have a hard time believing that they would do that, but like, if they're actually truly interested in going all in this year, then yeah, I mean, trade a first round pick, especially a bottom of the first round pick, for a guy that has known quantity at a position that you need. It makes sense. But again, the problem is that I don't believe that this team is going to do that. I just don't. We've never seen that. We've never seen this team truly go all in. We've heard this team talk about going all in, but we've never actually seen it. So we'll see. But I would do that. Yeah, I think that makes sense, especially if you're going for it all this year. Then yeah, definitely.
You just like Derek Brown because he's an Auburn Tiger.
Well,
that's
maybe.
All.
Yeah, maybe.
Without looking, do you know how many tackles Derek Brown had this year? Just guess.
No, but I bet he had a lot, because they didn't have a lot of great linebackers.
103.
He had 103 tackles as a defensive tackle.
Most ever by a defensive tackle.
I was going to say, I've never heard of a defensive tackle getting 100 tackles before. That's insanity.
Yeah. Go get Derek Brown. He's a really good player.
Yeah. Listen, you don't need to tell me. I remember what he was like. He had some rough years early on in Carolina, but he's a very
and that should be a good thing for Mozzie Smith.
Exactly.
Like Dexter Lawrence, Derek Brown. These are all pro caliber defensive tackles that had horrendous rookie seasons. Now, I don't know if they lost 45 pounds like Mozzie Smith did, but it just goes to show like that is one of the positions that takes a while for these guys to develop. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. It sure does.
All right, let's talk about whether or not the Cowboys should consider drafting a quarterback this year. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, all you have to do is pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the most fun that I've ever had playing DFS because there's so many different players and stat projections to choose from. It's absolutely incredible. Plus, PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return for the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Every day, we've got a busy next couple of weeks for you. We're going to discuss maybe a defensive coordinator opening, some options at the DC if the Cowboys need to grab one of those. We'll also continue to answer your questions. I saw before I jumped on, it was like 74 questions I got. You guys want to talk about this team, so we're gonna answer your questions. Our last one here comes from @honey_badger_8. He wants to know, would it be foolish if the Cowboys did not draft a quarterback in the top 4 rounds this season?
Would it be foolish? I don't know. I don't know that it's necessarily foolish. It depends on exactly what they do with Trey Lance, I would imagine, right? Like he's if I'm not mistaken, a free agent after this season, right?
Correct.
So he only has one more year. So I wouldn't be shocked if they drafted a later round quarterback and then, continued to work Trey Lance a little bit. And Cooper Rush is another interesting, situation, right? I don't know off the top of my head what Cooper Rush's contract details are, but
I think he's got one more year left as well.
Yeah, so then I think there's a likelihood that you don't do much at the quarterback position in the draft, or that you kind of did what you were going to do as far as your quarterback draft when you traded for Trey Lance, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be shocked if they spent a 7th round pick or a 6th round pick on a quarterback at this point and just kind of rolled with what the quarterback room was this season. But I think, with 1 year left on Trey Lance, they've already made an investment there. I would be pretty shocked if they put another high draft pick into a quarterback, unless something happens with Dak that I don't think will happen. So, I think likely your draft quarterback this year is Trey Lance.
What's hard about that is I actually really like some of the options on day. Listen, I don't think Dallas is drafting quarterback in the first 2 days of the draft. They have too many other needs. They're going to want guys that can come in and contribute, right?
That's
but
right.
Day 3, it's different. I do like some of the names on day 3 in this draft, whether it's like Spencer Rattler, who was at Oklahoma, went to South Carolina. He'll be at the Senior
highly
Bowl.
ranked recruit coming out of high school.
Jordan Travis, who was on that Florida State team that was undefeated. Joe
coming
Milton
off an ACL.
Joe Milton from Tennessee, who's like 6'10", 290 pounds, has a huge arm. Sam Hartman at Notre Dame. Like, there are some really interesting quarterbacks in the day.
That just kind of ran into some issues, right? That normally would be probably first. I mean, Jordan Travis, if he didn't get hurt, probably a 1st round pick if he comes out. Some of these guys that just ran into some bad luck. So there is a possibility that you could take a lottery pick on one of these guys later, for sure.
And there's going to be guys. I saw a tweet from Benjamin Albright yesterday that's like, hey, Michael Penix could be a 3rd or 4th round pick. That's somebody who took Washington to the national championship game.
That's right.
There's just a lot of quarterbacks in this draft. I think PFF, I think I saw the number. They had like 15 draftable grades on quarterbacks this year. But But I think you're right. It's not that the Cowboys wouldn't like to add a quarterback. It's number one, they don't have the practice reps to develop a guy right now because
Yeah.
they're already trying to develop Trey Lance. And how do you roster all of these guys? Because Cooper
Yeah.
Rush is going to be the backup, and you want him to be the backup because if that goes down for a half or a game, you feel really comfortable about him running the offense. I think your answer is probably next year, right? Especially if they don't extend Dak, if they don't extend Trey Lance, Cooper Rush's deal would be up, and probably, let's say Mike McCarthy moves on. There's probably not that need to keep a Cooper Rush because he's going to be running a different system. Anyways,
Yep.
I think 2025 is where you're looking at the quarterback class.
I do think that you're going to get a lot more of a look of Trey Lance this season, though, because I think
you should.
Yeah, you should, because you need to know what you've got there, and if you have the opportunity to either trade him for an asset or show him off to the NFL to get an asset thrown your way for a trade, or if you need to make a hard decision by the end of this year, if you want to move on from Dak Prescott, or if whatever, then maybe Trey Lance is your potential bridge quarterback until you either draft a guy that you think is your long-term franchise, or Trey Lance develops into your franchise quarterback. So it's just, you don't really want to give up this kind of piece. The Trey Lance piece is really interesting because it keeps you from having to draft a quarterback, but it gives you like a very high ceiling developmental player that, like I said, has played enough games right now already in the NFL that he could be a bridge quarterback that if you wanted to have a season with him as your starter in, 2025 or something like that, while you're trying to figure out drafting a quarterback, he's a guy that at least has started games in the NFL before, and maybe you could develop into, average starter or something.
Sure. We're just waiting until 2025 when the Cowboys can get Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders to bring this franchise back to relevancy. That's what.
No. Please.
I've already seen that floated out there.
I've suffered enough, haven't I? Like, I mean, that's
I did. One of the questions that we got from somebody is, when will the suffering end? And I said, buddy, you gotta wait a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. But, all right. Well, what another exciting episode.
another happy end of the week for the Locked On Cowboys show. Oh boy, it's gonna be a long off season.
It's gonna be no, it's all right. Things will get better. Well, once we get to the Senior Bowl, we'll start talking prospects. We'll get excited again. Trust me. Go check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Go check out our YouTube channel. We post videos every single day over there. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. And we will see you right back here on Monday.